Chapter 1. How Fire was Given to Men. In those old times, there lived two brothers, who were not like other men, nor yet like those mighty ones who lived upon the mountaintop. They were the sons of one of those titans who had fought against Jupiter, and had been sent in chains to the strong prison house of the lower world. The name of the elder of these brothers was Prometheus, or Forethought, for he was always thinking of the future, and making things ready for what might happen tomorrow, or next week, or next year, or it may be in 100 years to come. The younger was called Epimetheus, or Afterthought, for he was always so busy of yesterday, or last year, or 100 years ago, that he had no care at all for what might come to pass after a while. For some cause, Jupiter had not sent these brothers to prison with the rest of the Titans. Prometheus did not care to live among the clouds on the mountaintop. He was too busy for that. While the mighty folk were spending their time in idleness, drinking nectar and eating ambrosia, he was intent upon plans for making the world wiser and better than it had ever been before. He went out amongst men to live with them and help them, for his heart was filled with sadness. He found that they were no longer happy as they had been during the golden days when Saturn was king. Ah, how very poor and wretched they were. He found them living in caves and in the holes of the earth, shivering with the cold because there was no fire, dying of starvation, hunted by wild beasts and by one another, the most miserable of all living creatures. "If only they had fire," said Prometheus to himself, "they could at least warm themselves and cook their food, and after a while they could learn to make tools and build themselves houses. Without fire, they are far worse off than beasts." Then he went boldly to Jupiter and begged him to give fire to men, so that they may have a little comfort through the long dreary months of winter. "Not a spark I will give," said Jupiter. "No indeed. Why, if men had fire, they might become strong and wise like ourselves, and after a while they would drive us out of our kingdom. Let them shiver in the cold, and let them live like beasts. It is best for them to be poor and ignorant, so that we mighty ones may thrive and be happy." Prometheus made no answer, but he had his heart set on helping mankind, and he did not give up. He turned away and left Jupiter and his mighty company forever. As he was walking by the shore of the sea, he found a reed, or as some say, a tall stalk of fennel, growing, and when he had broken it off, he saw that its hollow center was filled with a dry, soft pitch, which he could burn slowly and keep on fire a long time. He took the long stalk in his hand and started with it toward the dwelling of the sun in the far east. "Mankind shall have fire, in spite of the tyrant who sits on the mountain top," he said. He reached the place of the sun in the early morning, just as the glowing golden orb was rising from the earth and was beginning his daily journey through the sky. He touched the end of the long reed to the flames, and the dry pitch caught on fire and burned slowly. Then he turned and hastened back to his own land, carrying with him the precious spark hidden in the hollow center of the planet. He called some of the shivering men from their caves and built a fire for them, and showed them how to warm themselves by it, and how to build other fires from the coals. Soon there was a cheerful blaze in the rude home in the land, and the men and women gathered round it, and they were warm and happy, and thankful to Prometheus for the wonderful gift which he had brought to them from the sun. It was not long until they learned to cook their food, and so to eat like men instead of like beasts. They began to leave off their wild and savage habits, and instead of lurking in the dark places of the world, they came out into the open air and the bright sunlight, and were glad because life had been given to them. After that, Prometheus taught them little by little 1,000 things. He showed them how to build houses of wood and stone, how to tame sheep and cattle and make them useful, and how to plow and sow and reap, and how to protect themselves from the storms of winter and the beasts of the woods. Then he showed them how to dig in the earth with copper and iron, and how to melt the ore, and how to hammer it into shapes and fashion from it the tools and weapons which they needed in peace and war. And when he saw how happy the world was becoming, he cried out, "A new golden age shall come, brighter and better by far than the old."